So with that, we do have a number of nominees to hear today, and we're going to have some introductions of those. And I know, Secretary, you got a busy calendar, so I'm going to give you the floor to start with, and you're welcome here, and we're always glad to have you back in the committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, the ranking member, to all the members for the opportunity to be here today. We feel that we have before you a very good panel, excellent panel of 4 ambassadors to important places, to the Bahamas, where we have not been able to have a representative in almost 9 years, maybe longer. It's been quite a while. On the Bureau that deals with population, refugees, and migration, which is clearly an issue that has impacted the country, but also has impacts on our neighbors in the region and around the world. And then in Jordan, which is, I don't need to explain what an incredibly important relationship that is for the United States. I'm here to introduce a fellow Floridian and someone who I've known for a very long time, Sergio Gor, who is the nominee to India, which is, I would say, one of the top relationships the United States has in the world today in terms of the future of what the world's going to look like. I said it when I appeared before you as a nominee to the position I currently hold as well, and I don't mean archivist, when I was here as in the position as for Secretary of State, and I repeat it again, that the 21st century, the story is going to be written in the Indo-Pacific. In fact, it's so important we've actually changed the name of the combatant command to the Indo-Pacific. India is at the core of that. And we are in a period of extraordinary transition in that relationship with India. We've got some really important issues coming up that we need to work with them on and work through on that implicate what's happening from Ukraine, but also implicate what's happening in the region. It is my view, I hope it'll be your view, that it is important that the United States be represented at that post with someone who has the direct ear and confidence of the President of the United States. And I know of no one over the last, certainly, period of time during this administration, but going back 4 or 5 years, no one who has had a better or closer working relationship than Mr. Gore. Someone who I've known since his time working here in the Senate, by the way, with one of our colleagues, and since then has gone on to do different things, but is very, very close to the President, has the President's confidence. And I can tell you that when you interact with these countries, in fact, I've already seen it, when you interact with these countries, having a representative in a place like India that has direct access to the Oval Office, to the President, and who they know can get things done both in the administration and through the Oval Office is critically important. And I don't know of anyone out there that's better positioned to do that than Sergio Gor. I would add one more footnote, and that is that in all of this is that in addition to that, I've also seen his administrative abilities. 95% of the people working in the government now, from political appointees, came through a process that he set up and had to operate. And that's I don't know if we fully appreciate how hard it is to staff up a new administration. And he ran that process with a small group and a small team, and I thought did an excellent job. So I think it shows his administrative abilities as well. So he's an excellent nominee. They're all excellent nominees, and I hope you'll give them your full consideration. And thank you for the opportunity to address that this morning.
Thank you, Secretary. You're certainly welcome to stay with us, but I know you've got a busy schedule, being archivist and all these other things that you deal with every day. So we will certainly excuse you, and thanks so much for joining us today. Well, I was going to go to Senator Hagerty, but I see he's got other things on his mind right now. So, Senator Cruz, how about you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege to introduce my friend Hershel Walker as President Trump's nominee as the ambassador to the Bahamas. Now, most Americans know Hershel as a legend on the football field. At the University of Georgia, he became one of the greatest college players of all time, ultimately winning the Heisman Trophy in 1982 and the national championship. He went on to a remarkable professional career with the USFL and then the NFL, where he played for the Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Giants, and most importantly, the Dallas Cowboys. And Hershel still tells me, and it always brings a smile to my face, that no matter where life takes him, he will always be a Dallas Cowboy. And Texans are grateful for that and quite proud of him. Hershel's story is much bigger than football. He represented our country as an Olympian in the 1992 Winter Games, competing as part of the U.S. bobsled team. Yeah. He's built successful businesses that supply products to schools, to the military, and to communities across America. And he's dedicated his time and energy to mentoring young people, to supporting charities and promoting health and fitness across the United States. While I've always been impressed with Hershel's achievements, both philanthropic and athletic, I have an even deeper appreciation of his character. He is a man of great faith, discipline, dependability, and resilience. Indeed, when it comes to discipline, one of the things I've learned about Hershel is he doesn't eat breakfast and he doesn't eat lunch. He only eats dinner, and I will say, speaking for myself, I don't know if anyone else on the panel, but I could do to skip a meal or two. And there's a reason you become a world-class athlete when you have that kind of discipline. Hershel embodies the characteristics many Texans hold dear: determination, humility, and true patriotism. And I believe his voice and his perspective will be an asset to this nation. I'm proud to call Hershel Walker a friend, and I look forward to his testimony today. Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, Hershel Walker will make a terrific United States ambassador to the Bahamas, and I encourage everyone on this committee to vote to confirm him.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. We appreciate that. And Senator Hagerty, you have something for the good of the order?
Thank you, Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen. I appreciate your having this hearing today with my distinguished colleagues. And I think you know it's a unique honor for me to introduce friends, particularly to do such a critical job as serve as ambassador to the greatest, to any nation, to represent the greatest nation in the world, and that's the United States. And today, it's my great honor to introduce my friend Sergio Gor to be ambassador to India. An absolutely critical relationship, and Sergio is absolutely perfect for this role. He's a proven leader across business and media, and is a senior staffer here in the Senate. On top of all of this, Sergio has delivered results in one of the toughest and highest stakes arena in Washington. That's the White House Presidential Personnel Office. At PPO, Sergio has maintained a record-setting pace for hiring. He staffed nearly 4,000 key roles across the government, including over 1,000 appointments on day one of the administration. Frankly, an amazing task. It didn't happen by accident. It took vision, discipline, and frankly, a relentless work ethic. But beyond the resume, Sergio Gor has achieved something that no resume can really underscore enough, and that is the complete trust of President Donald J. Trump. Sergio has stood by the president's side as a loyal and trusted advisor. In fact, Sergio is one of the absolute go-to people for President Trump. He has helped shape key strategies. He's delivered tough messages. He's ensured that the America First agenda is not just a slogan, but a governing reality. President Trump has called Sergio, quote, a great friend and someone I trust completely to deliver for the American people. Our relationship with India is now more important than ever. And if you think about the criticality of this, issues like trade, technology, defense, and regional stability are all at the fore in this vital relationship. And at this critical time, we need someone who can speak with clarity, who can act with conviction, and importantly, who has a direct line to the President of the United States. Sergio Gor is that person. When he speaks, New Delhi will know that he speaks not just for the State Department, but for the President himself. And I strongly urge my colleagues to support his nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hagerty. I appreciate that. And with that, first of all, I'd like to welcome Judge Janine Pirro with us today. Glad to be here and glad to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. The way this is going to work is I'm going to make a few opening remarks. I'm going to turn to the distinguished ranking member to do likewise, and then we'll hear about 5 minutes from each of the four nominees that we have, and then we'll open it up to a round of questions. However, today being the day that it is, I would like to take a moment to remember the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attack and their families. This moment changed our country forever. We will never forget the lives lost and irreversibly altered that day. Please join me in a brief moment of silence in honor of the victims of September 11th. With that, we'll turn to our agenda, and I have a few remarks to open, and then I'll yield to Senator Shaheen. First of all, I want to thank, obviously, the nominees here today, and importantly, their families for being with us here today, for your willingness to serve. Obviously, there's a sacrifice involved in that, and we're certainly appreciative that you're willing to make that sacrifice for your country. I'm going to start with Mr. Veprek, who is Assistant Secretary for Population, Refugees, and Migration. You'll work alongside President Trump and Secretary Rubio to secure our borders and make American foreign aid targeted and in service of our interests. I look forward to learning more about these plans and about the Bureau's new organizational structure, which will include elements of the former Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance at USAID. As part of the much-needed State Department reorganization, I hope you'll work to ensure the PRM delivers assistance with a project and needs-based approach. In previous administrations, PRM has contributed almost exclusively to UN agencies to deliver aid. And we all know the UN is certainly not the most effective way to make change to help those in need. I look forward to hearing your plans to keep America safe while getting aid to the places it is needed and where it is most advantageous to the United States. Mr. Walker, as President Trump's nominee for ambassador to the Bahamas, you would be the first U.S. ambassador in the country since 2011. President Trump and Secretary Rubio understand that the Bahamas is an important economic and security partner of the United States and will work to improve this relationship. After all, the Bahamas is just 50 miles from the U.S. shores and shares our democratic values and our economic and security interests. As China looks to increase its foothold in the Bahamas through its operation of the Freeport Container Terminal, its outsized diplomatic presence, and Huawei's near monopoly of local telecom networks, we must push back. You have your work cut out for you. I hope you can help us understand how you'd go about strengthening our bilateral relations with the Bahamas. Mr. Gore, as you know, India is a key partner, and our two countries have many opportunities to strengthen our cooperation on defense, technology, and trade. I really can't add much to what Secretary Rubio said, either about you or about the relationship with India. Both are incredibly important. As partners in the Quad, India and the U.S. play an important role in maintaining a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. While our relationship has its frictions, we cannot ignore that our countries are strategically aligned on the need to counter China's unfair economic practices and malign influence in the region. At the same time, you must balance those strategic priorities with difficult conversations. India's close energy relationship with our adversary, Russia, is incredibly troubling. President Trump has taken action to address India's dangerous purchases of Russian oil, and I hope you will double down on those efforts, making clear to your Indian counterparts that the United States will not tolerate support for Putin's war machine. Mr. Holtsnider, the United States and Jordan have a strong, long-standing relationship guided by our shared goals of a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Middle East. His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan is a close friend of this committee and its members, and there isn't any world leader who meets with us more frequently. Last fall, our ally Israel and Jordan celebrated 30 years of peace, but this relationship is facing strong headwinds. Anti-Israeli sentiment among Jordanians is on this rise, and this sentiment has only deepened in the years since Hamas's brutal October 7th terror attack. You've had a distinguished career of service across the Middle East in both the State Department and the Marine Corps. As ambassador, it will be your responsibility to look out for Americans in Jordan and to work with your counterparts to combat extremism and promote stability in the region. I look forward to hearing your plans to do so. Thank you again to all of our witnesses here today, our nominees, and for your willingness to serve. And with that, the distinguished ranking member, Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our nominees and to all of your friends and family who are here with you today. Unfortunately, historically, both Republican and Democratic administrations have struggled with the Senate's slow confirmation process. Sometimes delays have been political. Other times they reflect legitimate concerns about the nominees themselves. and their potential impact on American security. Senator Risch and I have spoken about the importance of advancing career nominees at our first business meeting of this Congress. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that you continue to push for more career nominees as part of that commitment. Thank you as well for agreeing to postpone consideration of the nominee for Kuwait as we wait for more information on his background. All of this is to say that I, too, have been frustrated by the slow consideration of nominees. But I also believe that when a nominee requires further scrutiny, either for policy reasons or because of their backgrounds, that the Senate must do its job. Now, the nominees before us today, like all of our nominees, require careful scrutiny. Take India, for example. Both Democratic and Republican administrations, including the last Trump administration, have made serious investments in our relationship with India. India is not only a major power in the region, its workforce will help drive the future of technology and economic growth, and we heard both from the chairman and Secretary Rubio how important that relationship is. I was very concerned, as I'm sure others on this committee were, when I saw Prime Minister Modi standing alongside Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping at the summit in Beijing earlier this month. But I worry that that meeting should not come as a surprise for those who have read the committee's minority report, The Price of Retreat. China has been working diligently to capitalize on this moment of America's retreat, and pushing India into a closer relationship with China is a serious setback to U.S. interests. Mr. Gore, you've been nominated to serve as ambassador to New Delhi. I hope you will speak about what you would do, if confirmed, to rebuild that critical U.S.-India relationship. Mr. Walker, if confirmed, you will serve as ambassador to the Bahamas. This nation is a close American neighbor off our coast of Florida, and China has long sought to expand its influence there. I'd like to hear from you what your plans are to advance American interests in the Caribbean as China pushes deeper into the region. And Mr. Veprek, you've been nominated to be Assistant Secretary for Population, Refugees, and Migration. In the past, this was a bureau that was focused on helping asylum seekers ranging from Russian journalists to Afghan women. Under President Trump, rather than supporting asylum seekers, the Bureau has too often prioritized resettlement of groups like Afrikaners from South Africa. It's also supporting the administration's efforts to deport people to countries where they have no ties, including to El Salvador, South Sudan, or Rwanda. If confirmed, what will you do to ensure that the U.S. is not sending people to places where they face torture, trafficking, or sexual exploitation? And finally, Mr. Holtsnider, if confirmed, you will serve as ambassador to Jordan. Jordan, as already has been outlined, is an important American partner in the Middle East. I was glad to visit there last month, met with King Abdullah, and saw some of the operations in Jordan that are very important to the United States. They work closely with our U.S. military and intelligence community and host thousands of Palestinian and Syrian refugees. I'm pleased the administration has nominated someone with experience and a long diplomatic career to this critical post. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen, and I'd certainly concur in your remarks regarding the advice and consent constitutional obligation of this committee. It's one of the heritages we've gotten from the Founding Fathers. This committee obviously takes that seriously, and I want to thank the President and Mr. Gore, who's here today, who've worked closely with me as we've worked through these the nominations. There's always some give and take on those, and I really appreciate the openness with which we've had those discussions. So we will now hear from our nominees, and Mr. Gore, we're going to start with you. 5 minutes, and we hope everybody will keep it to about 5 minutes. If you have lengthier statements, we'll be more than happy to include those statements in the record for this hearing. But at the moment, 5 minutes each. Mr. Gore.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. Before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the senseless killing of one of my closest friends yesterday, Charlie Kirk. Charlie cared about our nation, loved his beautiful family, and was always there if you needed anything. Charlie was an optimist. Our prayers are with his beautiful wife, Erica, and her 2 young children. Rest in peace, Charlie. Members of the committee, it is truly an honor to be here. For those of you who have yet to meet, my name is Sergio Gor, and I currently have the honor of serving as Assistant to the President and Director of Presidential Personnel at the White House. I can proudly report that under the President's leadership, the Office of Presidential Personnel has filled over 95% of jobs at record speed, beating every other administration in American history. I also want to thank this committee for the incredible work you have done to confirm so many of our nominees, often in a bipartisan effort. I've also spent many years here on Capitol Hill, including working for members of this very committee. It's especially humbling to walk these halls today as President Donald Trump's nominee for ambassador to India. Serving at the pleasure of President Donald Trump has been the greatest honor of my life. And if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I look forward to serving the United States abroad in India. We are fortunate to have a president who has made bringing peace around the world a top priority. I would like to take a moment and thank President Trump for his trust and confidence in me. India is a strategic partner whose trajectory will shape the region and beyond. Under President Donald Trump's strong leadership, I'm committed to advancing America's interest in this important partnership. India's geographic position, economic growth, and military capabilities make it a cornerstone of regional stability and a critical part of promoting prosperity and advancing the security interests that our nations share. As Secretary Rubio noted, India is one of the most important relationships our nation has in the world. If confirmed as ambassador, I will work to deliver on the President's agenda and advance U.S. interests by increasing our defense cooperation, ensuring fair and beneficial trade, deepening energy security, and furthering technology. If confirmed, I will prioritize deepening defense and security cooperation with India. This includes expanding joint military exercises, advancing co-development and co-production of defense systems, and concluding critical defense sales. These efforts will enhance collaboration between our forces while supporting American defense manufacturers and making America more prosperous. India's population of over 1.4 billion and its rapidly growing middle class present immense opportunities for America. From artificial intelligence to pharmaceuticals to critical minerals, the potential for collaboration is vast. However, in the past, India's protectionist policies and regulatory barriers have prevented us from fully realizing this partnership. If confirmed, I'll work to advance trade that is fair, reciprocal, and beneficial to the American workers and businesses. I will advocate for reforms that will make India's markets more accessible and transparent. I will also work towards President Trump's ambitious goal dubbed Mission 500 to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030, which will expand American exports, creating jobs and prosperity for our citizens. Improving U.S.-India trade ties will not only bolster U.S. competitiveness, but also reduce China's economic leverage over other nations. I will encourage Indian investment in U.S. manufacturing capacity, and we will also be furthering, with Indian investments in the United States, we will also be furthering our strategic pharmaceutical supply chain and create more jobs right here at home in the United States. India is also a strategic partner in advancing critical and emerging technology. The U.S.-India Trust Initiative, launched in February by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, lays out a path to leverage the impressive capacity of the U.S. tech sector to outcompete China on the development of AI, quantum, semiconductors, and other critical and emerging technologies. I will advance this administration's AI action plan, which will ensure the dominance of American AI technology in India and globally. Our technology cooperation will require significant energy resources, another area where the United States and India can work together. If confirmed, I will work to increase American energy exports to India, establishing the United States as a leading supplier of crude oil, petroleum products, and liquefied natural gas. Finally, India's role in ensuring the stability and security of the region cannot be understated. A stable South Asia is in the interest of the United States and all the nations. President Trump's leadership, the U.S.-India partnership, will define the 21st century. It is only by working together that we can make that aspiration a reality. If confirmed as ambassador, I will work to ensure the United States remains a global leader while fostering a partnership that benefits both nations. I look forward to working with you all to achieve these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. And on behalf of the committee, of course, we extend our condolences to you personally on the loss, and of course to the Kirk family for this senseless tragedy that happened yesterday. With that, Mr. Walker, you have the floor.
Chairman, Ranking Member Shaheen, and members of the committee, thank you for holding this hearing. It's a privilege for me to be with you today. Those of you who don't know me personally must be wondering what qualification do I bring to the table that will help me serve with distinction as USA Ambassador to the Bahamas. Throughout my life, many people have underestimated me in academics, athletics, and business, and I've always proven them wrong. I've done it through discipline, determination, and by outworking everyone in every task, large or small. No one has ever questioned my work ethics. If confirmed, I will apply the same work ethics to my role as ambassador. This country I love deserves no less. I also have been blessed with the gift of being able to relate to people from all walks of life. I built trust and compassion in humans by finding things that unite rather than divide. Although I've never held the official title as an ambassador, I've spent decades serving as an informal ambassador to our youth, encouraging them to get a good education and to stay physically fit. I've been an ambassador to the men and women in the military, stressing the importance of mental health. I've traveled to hundreds of military installations around the world, making sure our service members feel comfortable seeking mental health counseling and treatment. I've also served as an ambassador to the athletic world through the United States as an Olympian and a professional athlete. As the owner and CEO of two successful businesses in the food service industry, I know firsthand what it takes to start and run a business. I understand the importance of tourism and trade. In addition to hard work, the secret sauce is relationship building. That is my strength and my passion. As you know, there's not been a Senate-confirmed U.S. ambassador to the Bahamas since 2011. The American and the Bahamian people deserve better. As ambassador, it will be my highest priority to keep American tourists and residents safe and secure. I will work closely with the Bahamian government on all matters pertaining to our mutual security. Having an ambassador in place is more important than ever. China is trying to increase its influence in the region. It has built nearly a $3 billion deep water port in the Bahamas and has made other moves that can threaten our national security. There is a rise in the drug smuggling there in the Bahamas, and this is a real danger to the United States. The threat of American lives cannot be overstated. Tackling this serious problem requires leadership, cooperation between our government. Through Operation Bahamas, Turks, and Caicos, the United States worked collaboratively with the Northern Caribbean to disrupt illegal trafficking. If confirmed, I will see that this initiative continue to be strong. The nearest island of the Bahamas are only 50 miles from the United States. The U.S. is the Bahamas' largest trading partner. If confirmed, I will advise American businesses community of trade and the investment opportunities that exist in the Bahamas. I will also make sure the Bahama government is a welcoming environment for the U.S. to invest so we can advance America's prosperity. As ambassador, I will strive to build lasting relationship with the Bahamian American community in the United States. The Bahamian American tradition and contribution are the important part of America's story. If confirmed, I will deepen our economic and cultural ties with the Bahamian people. I will also showcase American excellence through sports diplomacy. Lastly, I will make sure the Bahamian people are included in our 250th Independence Day celebration. In closing, if confirmed, I will partner with the people of the government of the Bahamas to advance our shared interests. I will work with the elements of the U.S. government, including especially members of this committee, to promote America's interests in the Bahamas throughout the region. It will be my honor to serve my country as an ambassador to strengthen the ties between the United States and the Bahamas. I will always ensure my staff and I represent the people of the United States to the best of our ability. I thank President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, and my wife. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. We'll now turn to Mr. Veprek. The floor is yours.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. As you did, Chairman, I'd like to start by recalling the September 11th attacks. It is fitting that we remember the Americans who lost their lives 24 years ago today, as well as the service and sacrifices of many others in the years since to safeguard our country. Senators, President Trump has nominated me to lead a bureau charged with addressing what is, in my view, our country's greatest challenge, migration. I thank him and Secretary Rubio for entrusting me with this important task. I'd also like to thank my family. Over 23 years ago, I entered the Department of State with the first Foreign Service orientation class after the September 11th attacks. And since then, I've had the privilege of serving my country in a variety of capacities all around the world. My family has supported me throughout, graciously accommodating many moves and long absences. Members of the committee, during President Trump's current administration, we have seen a significant reduction in border encounters and a reversal of migratory flows into the United States. These are important achievements. If confirmed, I will ensure that the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration helps sustain the President's whole-of-government effort to giving Americans the secure borders they deserve and to ensuring the sovereignty of our nation. U.S. diplomacy is an important part of that effort. Whether it is ensuring that foreign countries facilitate the repatriation of their nationals who have no right to remain in the United States, negotiating arrangements to accept the transfer of illegal aliens removed from American communities, or working with the Department of Homeland Security to facilitate cost-effective voluntary removals, the Department of State has a leading role, and the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration should be at the forefront. Regrettably, in previous years, the Bureau took the opposite approach in the policies it promoted and the foreign assistance programs it managed. Instead of protecting our borders, they facilitated mass migration into the United States. That will not recur on my watch. If confirmed, I will direct the Bureau to support the voluntary remigration of those who have no right to be in our country and support other countries that help us achieve our immigration enforcement goals. On that point, let me speak about foreign assistance generally. I share Secretary Rubio's vision for an America First foreign policy, foreign assistance that aligns with administration policies and advances concrete U.S. national interests. I believe that to be a common-sense approach for good stewardship of public funds. If confirmed, I would seek to apply it in the foreign assistance programs managed by the PRM Bureau. That means streamlining staffing, consolidating programming where possible, and getting other countries to step up so that the United States does not carry an outsized load. Also, we cannot engage in so-called forever aid. That open-ended blank check approach can have the perverse outcome of prolonging humanitarian crises. Finally, for our strategic assistance, there must be a clear and direct connection with U.S. foreign policy goals. In concluding, let me return to my opening theme, the need to answer the challenge posed by migration. Perhaps the most important root cause of mass and illegal migration today is the abuse of refugee and asylum systems. The current framework of international agreements and norms on migration developed after the Second World War in a completely different geopolitical and economic context. It cannot be expected to function in our modern world, and indeed it does not. The need for reform has been clear for a number of years, and under President Trump, we finally have a leader willing to consider it. If confirmed, I will seek to work with other countries to build the support needed to reform this broken system. I will aim to ensure the principles of national sovereignty and rule of law get proper consideration in the global migration regime. Members of the committee, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veprek. Mr. Holtsnider, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we are here on September 11th, I would like to acknowledge those who died 24 years ago, never forgotten. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as the President's nominee to be the United States Ambassador to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. I would also like to thank the senators on this committee for their focus on the bilateral relationship, including recent travel to Jordan by the Ranking Member and other members of this committee. I'm honored by this nomination and grateful to President Trump and Secretary Rubio for the confidence that they have shown in me. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with this committee and the rest of the Congress to advance U.S. foreign policy interests in Jordan. As I've done previously before this committee, I would again like to thank my family, my wife Nana, our children Maud and Henry, for their unwavering support and sacrifice throughout my career, especially during my time in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. From my earliest engagements as a young enlisted Marine in the 1990s to my most recent overseas assignment in a leadership role at our U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, I understand the importance of getting policy right in the region. The U.S. strategic partnership with Jordan, a major non-NATO ally, spans 7 decades and is rooted in our security relationship. Our military and law enforcement cooperation with Jordan helps us combat terrorism, deter illicit narcotics flows, and counter malign actors. With a defense cooperation agreement and a bilateral memorandum of understanding, we have important opportunities to update and enhance our security partnership. If confirmed, I commit to strengthening our security partnership and prioritizing support for our U.S. military colleagues throughout the region, as I have done in previous assignments. As we execute President Trump's decision to give the new Syrian government a chance, our partnership with Jordan is especially critical. Jordan's leadership has also been instrumental in helping blunt the impact of Iranian adventurism this year. Jordan has also demonstrated receptivity to U.S. concerns regarding Chinese tech companies' involvement in Amman's 5G infrastructure and other critical digital infrastructure, and is aligned with the United States in mitigating the risks of China's technological expansion in the country. As the committee knows, Jordan is an important multilateral partner on many issues. If confirmed, I will encourage the Jordanian government to continue to play an important and constructive role as a regional leader and advance the President's efforts for peace in the region. Thousands of Americans live in Jordan, and many others visit as tourists or participants in U.S. government exchange programs. If confirmed, I will ensure assistance to U.S. citizens in Jordan continues to be a top U.S. priority for the embassy team. Before I conclude, I would like to thank the dozens of people in the Department of State and on your congressional staffs who assisted with the nomination process. I would also like to thank the members of this committee again for their sustained focus on our Middle Eastern partners. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate, again, all of you. We're going to do a round of questions, 5 minutes per senator to start with, and I want to start with you, Mr. Gore. I think most people are aware of how close you are to the president and how important that is, obviously, in an ambassadorial post. But I think nothing underscores it more than the fact that he not only appointed you as the ambassador to India, but also as an envoy for South and Central Asian affairs. And I wonder if you could talk about that for a minute and elaborate on that. That's a great honor. You know, Tom Barrack it's not a usual thing. Tom Barrack's making it work right now, obviously in Turkey and Syria and Lebanon. Also a Rubik's Cube, but you're going to face the same thing in Central Asia. Tell us about it.
Thank you for your question, Chairman. As you mentioned, we do have a handful of envoys that represent this White House. Tom Barrack is an excellent example, along with Steve Witkoff. And in that capacity, I will be able to work with 12 additional nations at the direction of the President on issues that might arise to that level. I am not nominated to be an ambassador to 12 nations. I'm here as the nominee to India. So I am a special envoy to those 12 nations to complement the ambassadors that we have there, the career staff that we have at those embassies. Should we have an issue that arises to a certain level from those posts or from the White House, I have the unique ability, along with the other envoys, to be able to directly get the President of the United States and raise it to that level. And so that's a good thing. I'm there to complement. I'm not there to subtract anything from those careers, from those ambassadors. Should they need my help on anything, it'll be an open door policy, and we'll take it back to the White House.
Fair enough. Good explanation. Mr. Veprek, I want to turn to you for a minute. And you're in a really interesting and important role at the department. You know, President Trump ran on as one of his signature promises to close the back door with the illegal immigration we were having. And the American people responded and were very clear that they wanted that stopped. And he very quickly slammed the back door, and there's nobody coming through. I think now there's another side of that coin, and that is legal migration. And it's not getting any attention, and it should. I think most Americans are not particularly focused on the fact that we've had a long, proud history for all of our time as a nation of having legal migration to this country. There's been a steady stream over recent years. And I think probably it doesn't get the attention because it doesn't cause trouble. Indeed, it complements the United States, and we welcome it. I think we're in a particularly important position right now to be examining that, because as we have closed the back door, we have closed what has been an opportunity for our agricultural community, for our home building community, for a number of communities here that use migrant labor. And so I think we need to really focus on that, make sure that these industries get a steady flow of workers that are needed. There is no doubt at all that these workers are needed in this country, and it can be handled, and it can be handled very well. It's a real need here in America.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could address in part the role I would play, if confirmed, as Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. That Bureau does have responsibility over one part of the legal migration flow that you talked about, and that is refugee admissions to the United States. Now, at the Department of State, the Bureau that would cover, I believe, most of the flows that you're talking about would be the Bureau of Consular Affairs, including for certain forms of temporary work visas. And of course, the Department of State works in conjunction with the Department of Labor and Department of Homeland Security more broadly in order to operate these programs.
Well, I appreciate that, and I guess I should have refined the question a little bit more. The refugee issue is as important as the migration issue, and it really needs coordination between the two offices. You want to speak to that for a minute?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the opportunity to address that. In the past, I've worked with, in the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, working very closely with Department of Homeland Security, and particularly U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And so, if confirmed for this role, I would anticipate, again, close coordination with DHS and USCIS to conduct a U.S. refugee admissions program in accordance with the President's determination for the populations to be admitted to the United States.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, I hope you will, along with coordinating, raise the issue because it really isn't getting much attention, and it does need attention because these industries that use this kind of labor, they're in dire need, and it's going to take coordination, as you've described, undoubtedly, but the issue itself needs to be raised. So thank you very much. Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gore, I want to start with you because it's been reported that this administration has conducted loyalty tests for individuals who are seeking jobs in government, and that those people who are not deemed as loyal are purged, and that there's retribution against those people who are believed to have been disloyal to the president. Now, if confirmed, you would oversee one of the largest U.S. posts abroad. You would manage a team of career personnel. Do you commit to not pursuing retribution or retaliation against anyone under your purview across the government for their personal or political beliefs?
Senator, thank you for your question, and I enjoyed our meeting yesterday. I do commit to that. Not only do I commit to that, in fact, the State Department is uniquely positioned, and we have some incredible talent in the Foreign Service. And that is a unique skill that they bring over many decades of service there. We do not have that across every other department. The Foreign Service is uniquely positioned to bring that expertise to our posts, to our missions, to our embassies. And so I very much look forward to working with those careers and enhancing, the America First agenda abroad with them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that response. One of the things we talked about in our meeting yesterday was the India's reaction to tariffs on their buying oil from Russia, which helps to fuel the war in Ukraine. And given that China is the world's largest purchaser of Russian oil, how will you explain the distinction to the Indians about why they have been spared the same kind of tariff treatment from the administration?
So 3 points, Senator, on that. We're actively negotiating with the Indians right now. In fact, the president has invited their commerce and their trade ministers to come visit us next week, and they'll be meeting with Ambassador Greer here in Washington. Part of that will include a hopeful deal. We're not that far apart right now on a deal. In fact, they're negotiating the nitty-gritty of a deal. Secondly, look, we hold our friends to a different standard. Frankly, we expect more from India than we do sometimes from other nations. I do think it will get resolved over the next few weeks. And finally, we commend you and the chairman. You're both co-sponsors of Senator Lindsey Graham's bill, which seeks to impose 500% tariffs. So the president has imposed 25% tariffs. The bill that almost every single member of this committee is a co-sponsor of goes much higher. So I think we're all in agreement on that.
Well, I certainly agree with that, and I hope that you will encourage that we treat China in the same way as we treat India, given what they're doing to fund Russia's war machine.
Not only that, Senator, but as you know with the president, he is very much open to that. He's spoken about that. In fact, he's encouraging our European allies to do the same, and so I think we are on the same page.
Thank you. Mr. Veprek, did I understand you to say in your opening statement that you believe the cause of migration is the refugee and asylum system that we have in the United States and in other countries?
Senator, thank you very much for the opportunity to address that. In my view, one of the biggest root causes of mass and illegal migration, the phenomenon we're seeing around the world, is the current migration regime, that is to say the framework of international agreements and norms that was built after the Second World War for a completely different world. We live in a different world now with quick international travel, rapid international communications. It's easier for people to retain their connections back home. It's not like people have to migrate and sever all connections with back home. And so now we have a system where it is possible for people who are seeking to migrate for economic purposes to exploit the current system of refugee and asylum protection, not just in the United States, but in other countries around the world. We hear from some of our other partners that they perceive this same problem. And so, if confirmed, one of the things I would want to work on is working with them to try and reform the system.
But you do understand that the root causes of migration are in most cases famine, starvation, climate change, war, conflict in all its forms, drug cartels, violence, that's what drives refugee populations to look for asylum and to try and take advantage of opportunities that may allow them to get away from those kinds of disasters. You do understand that, I assume.
Senator, thanks for the opportunity to address this a little further. For migration writ large, I think there are as many different motivations as there are migrants in the world. Everybody has his own reason for wanting to leave his home country and move to another. Now, for refugees, we're talking about a narrower set of motivations. The definition of refugee is set in our law and is set in certain international instruments.
I'm not asking you about the legal explanation for refugees. I'm asking you about whether you understand the root causes that force people to leave their homes. I have had an opportunity to meet with many refugees, not only in the United States, but around the world. And what I hear consistently from them is that they want to go home. The reason they have fled is because they're facing violence at home, because they're facing starvation, because they have no economic opportunities and can't support their families. That's the question that I'm asking you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Appreciate that. Senator Hagerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gore, I'd like to start with you, if I might. I'd like to talk about the relationships that exist between the United States and India. I don't think there are few relationships that are as critical for our national security and for our economic relationships as the relationship that we enjoy with India. And I've been fortunate, I would say, to be in the presence of both President Trump and Prime Minister Modi at the same time on multiple occasions. I can say this: there's a great relationship between the two leaders. There's a relationship that I could see of mutual trust, and I think it's a wonderful foundation. I also see an issue, and I think it's very clear that President Trump is dead serious about resolving the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. He's dead serious about bringing this to an end. And India can play an important role in this. You and I have talked about that, but India can play a critical role. I think my colleagues are aware of this. But there's sort of a circular transaction network where India buys Russian crude at a discount, they refine it, and they sell it back to the Europeans. We need the Europeans to be buying American energy. We need Russia's flow of funds to be shut down. We need to bring this conflict to an end. You have a unique and strong relationship with President Trump. Could you comment on how you would leverage that deep personal relationship with leadership in India to help bring the conflict in Ukraine to an end?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Our president has a deep friendship with Prime Minister Modi, and that is something that is unique. In fact, if you have noticed, when he has gone after other nations, he tends to go after their leaders for putting us in that position and for the United States imposing those tariffs. When the president has been critical of India, he has gone out of his way to compliment Prime Minister Modi. They have an incredible relationship. I've been with them in the same room. We're not that far apart on a deal already on these tariffs. To your point, getting India to stop buying Russian oil is a top priority for this administration. Bringing peace around the world is a top priority to this administration. This president has engaged in trying to resolve wars and conflicts all over the world, from Africa to the Middle East to Ukraine, and even Southeast Asia. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the time will arrive upon us in the next few weeks and next few months for all of this to get resolved.
You know, I think we all saw the display in Beijing when we saw Prime Minister Modi and other leaders join Xi Jinping in China. A lot of pearl clutching going on here in America about what does that mean? Is India drifting away? I'll just highlight this, that China and India have a long history of grievances and distrust. Barely 5 years ago, China and India were fighting over a disputed border, and China used an electromagnetic weapon. They didn't use bullets, but they used an electromagnetic weapon to literally melt Indian soldiers. So I think that it's clear to me, and I think it's clear to all of us, that international relations are a lot more than a photo opportunity. They really run deep.
You're 100% right. Look, India shares a lot more in common with us than they do with China. And for far too long, we have not had that personal touch. And not only will I be able to bring that to New Delhi, but the president is also extremely personally engaged. Just earlier this week, he had complimented Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi responded in kind the next day. We have a great foundation that I hope, if I am confirmed, to build upon.
I think you're going to see a wonderful opportunity there, and I look forward to the results, because having someone with your close personal ties to the president and a prime minister, as Prime Minister Modi, is tend to appreciate that tie. I think you're going to find a very receptive audience there at a time when we really need it. So I appreciate that. Can I turn in the final moments here to Pakistan? Another critical relationship is the one between India and Pakistan. There's a rivalry that's been going on there for ages. Both nations are nuclear equipped. In May, this really erupted into open conflict. And President Trump and the administration stepped in to keep the fighting from further escalating. You were in the White House. You're familiar with the situation. I'd just like for you to comment in the moments that remain about how you are thinking about the situation with Pakistan and how you might address it.
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm here nominated to be ambassador to India. With that said, as I indicated earlier, this president is heavily engaged in bringing peace. That's what he wants to do.
Well, having been in the position that you're hopefully, and I encourage my colleagues to support this, that you're confirmed for, I'll say this: your relationship with the president is going to prove to be an invaluable asset. particularly in a country like India that's so critical, so vital to our strategic ties, and the relationship that's already there, at least the foundation that's there with Prime Minister Modi, I think is going to be invaluable to us, and I look forward to seeing your success here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the nominees.
Tim, before you start, for the information of the panel, we got members coming and going. It's out of no disrespect to you, but we got votes going on, so they either send the bailiff up to arrest us or we go down and vote. So excuse us as we come and go. So with that, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I put out yesterday, as many of us did, a comment praying for his family and for the university community. But I was struck when I walked into the Armed Services Committee meeting today that many of my colleagues knew him. I never met him. So for many in this body, and I think many who are here, he was an acquaintance or a friend. I know how devastating it was to Senators Klobuchar and Smith when their friends were killed a couple weeks ago. And so this is something that is not just in the news, but it is something that is personal to people in this place. And it's just too common. It's just too common. You know, we have a colleague in the Senate, Mark Kelly, whose life was ineradicably changed by political violence. We have a colleague in the House, Steve Scalise, whose life was ineradicably changed by political violence. President Trump survived an assassination attempt, and another assassination plot was foiled. There have been 300 instances of political violence in the United States since January 6, 2021. Some known individuals, some officials, some personalities, but also, you know, neighbors who are targeted with political violence by neighbors who don't agree with them. And I bring it up to express my sadness for colleagues who were personally affected because they know Mr. Kirk, but also in a Foreign Relations Committee meeting, one thing that's a little bit sad, and I suspect all of us have this experience, we travel as members of this committee or the Armed Services Committee, and we meet with people overseas, and they just think this is who we are. You know, I don't think this is who we are, but when we meet with people abroad and they sort of think this is who we are, it's sort of hard to mount the evidence and make the counter argument. So I don't have any answers. I've got a real sober sense of sadness today, especially for colleagues of mine who are personally affected by this. Mr. Gore, I've got a question for you. Bill Hagerty is a senator who really knows a lot about diplomacy, and he was asking you about the sort of photo op of Modi and Xi recently and said there's been some pearl clutching about it. And pearl clutching suggests that maybe it's not that serious a thing. But I am struck that we often said the same thing about Russia and China. They can't get along together. They've had a border dispute, and they've been at odds for a very long time. I've been in many hearings over the course of my 13 years here, especially in the Armed Services Committee, where officials of both the Trump, Biden, and Obama administration have sort of poo-pooed the notion of deep cooperation between Russia and China on the grounds that they've had a lot of historical enmity, so there's going to be a limit to what they can do together. And yet what we're seeing is Russia and China, and now together with Iran, about, you know, how do you balance, should you be confirmed, how do you balance, you know, being tough on India where we need to be tough, whether it's tariffs or markets not open to U.S. products, but also being mindful of the notion that the U.S.-India relationship has been a very important one, the world's oldest democracy, the world's largest democracy, and it's not only been important for the two nations, but it's also been important in the Indo-Pacific region as a little bit of a check against China sort of writing the rules for everybody. So how do we be tough when we need to be, but balance that with a real understanding that we want to be close to India and we don't want to push them in the wrong direction?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. And I commend you on what you had to say about Charlie Kirk. I was actually in touch with him about 2 hours before, and he said, I'm going on college campus, and I'll be in touch with you later this evening. And I was actually with Senator Shaheen in her office when my phone started blowing up with what was happening. To your question, I do agree with you. I will say I think we have a lot more in common with India than we do with Russia or China. Being the largest democracy at 1.4 billion, we share a lot more common values with the Indians. Secondly, we have a president who's extremely direct. And so you know where you stand with this president. I think the Indians appreciate that. Far too often we've seen some of our partners from Europe say one thing in front of a camera and another thing behind closed doors. With this president, people know where you stand. The Indians have appreciated that. They have consistently reached out to us. And as I mentioned earlier, there are active negotiations to resolve these trade imbalances. So we look out for our interests from the United States. And should I be confirmed, I will make it a top priority to ensure that they're pulled in our direction, not away from us.
Great. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. I appreciate your comments also about Charlie Kirk. He was known to many of us, and appreciate talking about the political violence as well and how horrible it is in America. It's very anti-American. So thank you for your comments on that. And Mr. Gore, I'll also want to pick up a little bit on the important relationship with India as well, and certainly agree with Senator Kane's comments that we don't want to take that relationship for granted, that it's a very important relationship, and we want to make sure that we are continuing to work with the Indians on all of our areas of common interest. And I agree that we do have more in common with them than they have in common, say, with China, or that we have in common with communist China. And in fact, I've had a chance to talk to the Indian ambassador and talked about getting the trade relationship right, which I know that's one of the things that you're going to continue to work on as well. And that also that how important it is for somebody such as you, who is close with the president, to be nominated to India. And they recognize the importance of that, and that what that means from this administration to nominate you to this position. So I think that it is very, very important what you're going to be doing here. So I'm looking forward to encourage, again, my colleagues to support your nomination. I want to talk a little bit about one of the areas that's a shared interest here. You know, we've got Indian troops that, work with us. We develop relationships. One of those areas is the Quad. And since the start of this administration, both President Trump and Secretary Rubio have committed to deepening the cooperation with the Quad to counter communist China and its effort to dominate the Indo-Pacific. I'm co-chair of the Senate Quad Caucus, along with Senator Duckworth, and I've been particularly pleased to see this focus on streamlining the Quad to deliver tangible results. Despite our trade negotiations with India, the fact remains that communist China remains the greatest geopolitical threat to both India and the United States. This reality is what revived the Quad during President Trump's first term, and will ensure the Quad's relevance and resilience going forward. For security and cooperation shaping the regional technology standards, to infrastructure investment, to securing supply chains, the Quad countries have too much to gain to let bilateral differences stifle continued progress. Mr. Gore, if you're confirmed, what actions will you take to strengthen the U.S.-India cooperation on the Quad?
Thank you for the question, Senator. 2 points. The Quad is vitally important. In fact, after Secretary Rubio was sworn in and clapped in at the State Department, 1 hour after his first meeting at Foggy Bottom was meeting with the foreign ministers of the Quad. The president is committed to continual engagement with the Quad. In fact, there's already been talks on a trip for the next Quad meeting. Earlier this year, I traveled to Japan and had the chance to meet with the Prime Minister of Japan. They're part of the Quad, and they have also emphasized the important relationship that we must continue to build on. On your earlier point of joint troop exercises, those continue to occur, and we would fully encourage that to grow. Just last week, 500 Indian troops trained with our troops in Alaska. That is a great thing. So in spite of this little hiccup that we have had over tariffs, our relationship is much stronger. It's built on many more decades. And so I will do everything in my power, should I be confirmed, to enhance that.
Yeah, thank you. And, I would say, certainly in my conversation with the ambassador, that the Indians understand that this is a trade negotiation and that we're trying to work out a deal that satisfies both countries. So I encourage the administration to continue to work forward on that. We get a successful resolution on this, which will really help pave the way for Quad leaders to move forward. My understanding is that there's scheduled to be a Quad meeting later on this year in India, and I would ask for your commitment to getting the trade relationships worked out, but also continuing to push forward that meeting. Can you make that commitment, and can you tell me how you think that summit might work out?
Without committing to exact dates, Senator, the President is fully committed to continue to meet with the Quad and strengthening it.
Great, fantastic. We would love to see that continuing going. One of the other things, too, that's important for my state, talking about the trade relationship with India, is that we're an agricultural state. India has been one where they've had high barriers to agricultural products that are, going into India. I think that we've got a lot to offer them when it comes to that. With the trade negotiations restarting, do you agree that getting India to reduce their tariffs on U.S. agriculture should be prioritized as part of the overall finalized trade agreement?
100%. And in fact, I got a briefing on this. Ambassador Greer is literally working on individual items that in the past, tariffs and barriers have made it prohibitive to be imported into India. That will hopefully be changing soon and over the next few weeks.
Yeah, great. And just as my time's running out here, I'll just, a friend of mine was just in India. He sells popcorn. And he was telling me that since independence, they've apparently had a rule that you can only own 2 acres of land as a farmer. And so consequently, you have 11,000 farmers farming 22,000 acres. And clearly, to me, that's not even subsistence farming. So I do think that there's a lot that we can offer India with regard to how they can improve agricultural production for their country. And with that, I believe, Mr. Murphy, you are up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Veprek, when you were the Deputy Assistant Secretary for this Bureau, you were engaged in a discussion at the UN Human Rights Council around what had previously been a deeply uncontroversial resolution titled the Incompatibility Between Democracy and Racism. It was normally adopted without a vote, same language every few years. But in 2018, you raised serious concerns about that document, apparently suggesting and questioning whether political leaders actually do have a duty to condemn racism. My understanding is that much of our learnings, especially from the Holocaust, is that without a sense of proactive obligation by political leaders to speak out against hate speech, it can grow and metastasize and end up turning into large-scale violence. So this idea that leaders do not have a duty to condemn hate speech or incitement sounds like a really dangerous viewpoint. You want to spend just a minute explaining why you took that stance in 2018?
Senator, thanks very much for the opportunity to address this. If memory serves, in 2018, we withdrew from the UN Human Rights Commission because the President determined that it was not a good use of U.S. resources to engage in this forum that itself spent a great deal of time in anti-American and anti-Israel activities. And I understand that's the same reason why the President decided to withdraw us again.
But I don't want to litigate that issue. That's a separate issue. Just I only have 3 minutes. Just stay tight on the question I asked you.
Yes, sir. And so this was referring to the comments that I made on a draft resolution that was being circulated for clearance at the State Department. So I understand the thing we're talking about.
Do you believe that leaders have a duty to speak out against racial hate speech or incitement?
I believe that's a judgment for political leaders to make, and that's part of the reason why we elect them to be leaders.
You don't believe they have a moral
duty? If memory serves from this draft resolution, the language was somewhat stronger, a duty to do it all the time. Sir, I can't police Twitter all day. I don't think any of us has time to police Twitter all day. We all have jobs to do. So the idea that the UN Human Rights Council saying that we have duties to condemn these things
well,
that's
a red herring. I mean, I don't have a duty to speak out against speech that I don't see. But if I encounter hate speech, I think I have a moral duty to speak out against it. News was sent to this committee overnight that the administration is going to put a cap of 40,000 to 60,000 on refugee resettlement from the coming year, and that almost the entirety of that quota will be met by resettling 40 to 60,000 Afrikaners. That's an extraordinary break with precedent and an extraordinary message to send to the world that the United States is only going to allow for white people to be processed through the refugee program. Don't you worry about the very dangerous message that sends, and why, in your understanding, is our entire refugee program this year going to be limited to white Afrikaners?
Well, Senator, I haven't been involved in the process of determining or making recommendations to the president on which populations would be admitted as refugees.
Is that something you would support?
Well, sir, if I'm confirmed for this policy, confirmed for this position, then I anticipate that I would be involved in making recommendations up to the president. Now, why the president has selected to give this group priority in refugee admissions, I think he's articulated very well in the executive orders where he's described the situation on South Africa. I would mention also that throughout our history, the United States has prioritized certain groups for refugee resettlement. So,
well,
for example, during the Cold War, people from the Eastern Bloc were selected, among other reasons, to make a political statement vis-a-vis our relationship with the Soviet
That's true. We have prioritized. We have never, ever before filled the entire quota with one ethnic or racial group. And so why is it that we believe that no one, with the exception apparently of 300 Afghans, are meritorious of resettling in the United States other than white Afrikaners?
Senator, anyone who's admitted to the United States as a refugee will have been adjudicated as a refugee by USCIS, which has the legal authority to do so. So they're all refugees according to our law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. It's good to have all of you here, and I'm very grateful that you're willing to serve. Mr. Gore, we'll start with you. I've known you for many years. We've traveled together, spent a lot of time together, and I really appreciated your service on behalf of the administration. I think it's an exciting thing for the United States ambassador to India, a major power, major economic force in the world, and one with potentially increasing significance to the United States. That ambassador is going to be somebody who's got a close relationship with the president, and I think that's wonderful. I think it's also an added plus that in a large embassy like that one, a lot of personnel, they've got a personnel expert, somebody who's head of the Office of Presidential Personnel, and also someone who seems to know every man, woman, and child in America. Never known anyone who knows as many people as Sergio Gor. Since taking office, President Trump has reinvigorated economic statecraft in a way that has enabled us to exert more power as a country. And to that end, I've commended his use of his authority over tariffs and trade matters in order to secure more favorable terms for the United States, both as it relates to tariffs on our products and also as it relates to what very frequently surfaces as non-tariff trade barriers, sort of below the surface trade restrictions that often go overlooked. And I remain hopeful, very optimistic, that President Trump will continue to use this in a way that will make for a more robust trade environment on better terms for the United States. In the past 9 months, that approach has paid some significant dividends, bringing allies and some competitors alike to the table in a way that they haven't been brought to the table in the past. This has also resulted in a lot of bilateral trade discussions with an eye toward bilateral trade agreements, which I think are good for us. Multilateral trade agreements may have their place, but they haven't always worked out as well for us. Just yesterday, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi committed to reopening trade negotiations with this in mind. So in this vein, I want to ask you a little bit about India and about the energy sector in India in particular. India continues to purchase Russian oil, of course. That's a fact. And it's also a fact that actors like Russia and Iran leverage their energy exports in order to constrain our allies' freedom to maneuver and to fuel regional destabilization. That's not ideal, to put it very mildly. The best way to reduce that kind of vulnerability is for the U.S. energy exports to dominate the international market. We want to be sufficient at home. We want to be exporting in significant quantities, enough so that we can exert a significant degree of dominance there. So as trade talks reopen, how do you see U.S. energy exports as being part of the conversation? And what are some of the things you think you could do as ambassador to try to facilitate those conversations?
Senator, thank you for your question. I think it is vitally important that we do have reciprocal open trade and fair trade, frankly. For far too long, it has been one-sided all over the world. And it took President Trump coming in there and saying, you know what, this has been working one way, but not the other way. We currently have a $45 billion deficit with our trading partners in India. And so we will make it a top priority, as I had mentioned earlier, on LNG, on petroleum products, and we will endeavor to make sure that we have access to those markets. To your earlier point on hiring personnel, I want to thank the majority committee, the majority members of this committee, because we have been able to successfully hire a lot of individuals from every single member, I think, on this committee. We took Senator Cruz as chief of staff, took Senator Scott's GC. I think we've taken 20 individuals from Senator Haggerty. So we appreciate that. And I think we've taken from you also, Senator Lee. And so we have a great bench across the federal government because we were able to utilize these incredible individuals that have worked here in the Senate.
What are some of the other areas of sort of mutual interest between us and India that you look forward to exploring? After, of course, you become fluent in at least Hindi, Urdu, Gujarati, and 2 or 3 others.
Thank you, Senator. I think the biggest priorities, of course, are U.S. economic and business interests, the security and stability, advancing security and stability, expanding U.S.-India cooperation in defense, energy, strategic technology, and also enhancing diplomatic and cultural ties. We have an incredible diaspora, a lot of individuals in Texas. It's an incredible diaspora. It's something that should be fostered and grown.
Great. See, my time's expired. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your service, and thanks for answering my questions, Mr. Gore.
And Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Chair Risch, and I want to thank you and Ranking Member Shaheen holding this hearing today, and all of our witnesses, your families, I see, are here, your willingness to serve. I want to start with you. I'm actually going to stay with you for my time here this morning, Mr. Veprek. I want to talk about the Lautenberg program, because I'm disturbed by the persecution of Jews, Christians, Baha'is, and other religious minorities living in Iran. For more than 20 years, the Lautenberg program has provided a safe and legal pathway for Iranian religious minorities to settle in the United States as refugees, with only 2 exceptions. During the first Trump administration, when the program was suspended in February 2017, and right now due to an executive order. As the walls close in on the Iranian regime, these religious minorities, well, they need more help for the struggles they're facing, their increasingly severe state-backed repression. So could you explain what efforts, if any, you made as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for PRM in the first Trump administration to reopen the Lautenberg program, and what role you would intend to play in supporting this program if confirmed as Assistant Secretary for PRM?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. I appreciate the opportunity to address this. When I worked in PRM before as a Deputy Assistant Secretary, one of the portfolios I had was refugee admissions, and in that capacity oversaw the U.S. refugee admissions program, including the Lautenberg program under it. Before I had come on the job there, the Lautenberg program, which worked to resettle Iranians who were suffering persecution from Iran to the United States via an intermediate European country, had been interrupted due to some logistical problems that probably I would have to go into in a different environment.
Yes.
While I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary, I worked on that, trying to get that process restarted for about 2 years. The principal issue was, say, overcoming some reluctance on the part of European partners. At the point that I left that position in would have been spring of 2020, I thought we were fairly close to getting there, but that was at the very beginning of COVID, and then I moved on to a different job and didn't have the opportunity.
I have some other questions to ask you. So will you be willing to come work with us on reviewing this program and helping now that we hope Iran is on its back foot, weakest point in decades, and we know that there's a burgeoning movement there for some freedom, and we want to protect those religious minorities. And I'm going to kind of build on Senator Murphy's question because I want to talk about vetting of Afrikaners and anti-Semitism as we think about persecution, because despite President Trump's indefinite suspension of the U.S. refugee admission program, reports suggest that, of course, we know white Afrikaners have been resettled in rapid fashion, with some being approved to travel to the U.S. in just weeks. So we want to talk about the vetting. One of the very first Afrikaner refugees resettled is openly anti-Semitic, including on social media. And the irony of this situation is that the administration has used the pretext of combating anti-Semitism to attack individuals and institutions it doesn't agree with. So combating anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, wherever it manifests, absolutely necessary. But why is this expedited admission of an Afrikaner refugee with a documented history of anti-Semitic social media posts? It is both unacceptable and offensive. So how do you think this individual slipped through the cracks? And if confirmed, will you commit to vetting future Afrikaners to the same high standards applied to other refugee applicants?
Senator, thanks very much for the question. Not working in PRM now, I'm not in a position to talk about how the vetting works or what might have happened in this case.
What will you do going forward?
But indeed, if I'm confirmed and in place, I can commit to ensuring that all refugees are vetted and screened to the highest possible standard.
And so you would agree that someone who has anti-Semitic social media posts and continues to do this would not be a person you would maybe consider clearing?
Just to be clear on the process for refugee admission, it's USCIS that makes the determination for who is a refugee and who gets refugee status to be admitted to the United States in that way. So that wouldn't be a decision that I would be able to make personally.
Well, you would be committed in the fight against anti-Semitism with all of us, and bringing these folks in, maybe not necessarily the best idea, just generally.
Indeed, I'm quite committed to the fight against anti-Semitism.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, I'm extremely alarmed by China's encroachment across the Western Hemisphere. Just a couple of weeks ago, I traveled to El Salvador, Panama, and Mexico, and met with leaders who all echoed the same concern. This is dangerous, and it is the result of bipartisan failure stretching back decades. As you noted in your testimony, we've had no Senate-confirmed ambassador to the Bahamas since 2011, under both Republican and Democrat administrations. That's left an enormous vacuum, allowing China to make inroads in the Bahamas for over a decade, pouring billions into a deep-water port and other critical sectors of the economy. The Bahamas is just 50 miles off the coast of Florida and serves as a key regional gateway. The proximity makes any major foreign investment or infrastructure project directly relevant to American national security. The United States should work with our partners to curtail China's growing influence in the Caribbean and the broader Western Hemisphere, and your role will be vital in advancing this critical partnership. What policy approaches, in your judgment, should we pursue to help the Bahamas resist Chinese pressure?
Well, thank you for your question, Senator. First of all, I can't set policy, and it is set by the president. But what I see China doing now is they're doing a lot of influence in the Caribbean. And one of the things that I feel that I would do to get China to is continue to work with the Bahamian people to make sure that we become the partner of choice, being so close because of being 50 miles of proximity from the United States, just to work with the Bahamian people and the Bahamian government to make sure that we become the partner of choice. And at the same time, work with a lot of the American companies to come to the Bahamas to see the key investments that they can make down in the Bahamas to combat against China, because I think they're coming down with a lot of money. And so if we can get other American companies to come down to invest as well in the Bahamas, that'll be a very key, that'll be a starting point.
Fully agree. Thank you. Mr. Gore, congratulations. Good to see you. You and I go back a long, long time. Indeed, just the other day, we were laughing At 13 years ago, when a former colleague of ours, John McCain, labeled your then boss, Rand Paul, and Michael Lee and me collectively wacko birds. And as you know, although I couldn't find it, I have a baseball cap in my office given to me by a grassroots supporter with Daffy Duck labeled wacko bird. And I remain a proud wacko bird. I feel pretty confident Senator Lee and Senator Paul do as well. You're going to be terrific in India. India, as you know, is quite literally on the front line against Chinese expansion. The U.S. and India are both acutely threatened by Chinese expansionism. President Trump and Modi undeniably respect each other and have signaled again and again that the United States and India are natural allies. Nevertheless, our relationship with India is far from perfect. You've talked about that in several different ways today in your testimony in response to questions. I'd like to ask you to talk a little more specifically about how India views Chinese expansionism and aggression and what that means for U.S.-Indian relations.
Senator, thank you for the question. Look, India is very concerned. I mean, they've openly spoken about this, as I think it was Senator Haggerty who pointed out just 5 years ago, they were in open conflict. And so while we might have our moment of hiccups right now, we are on the track of resolving that. Our relationship with the Indian government, with the people of India, extends many more decades, and it's a much warmer relationship than they have with the Chinese. Frankly, they are concerned by Chinese expansionism. And Chinese expansionism is not just on the border of India, it's all over the area. And so we share a lot in common, and we share a lot of the same concerns that other nations in the region do. So should I be confirmed, we will make that a top priority, that India is pulled into our side and away from them.
I fully agree. Another area that remains under-discussed is cooperation with India, specifically on energy. India has the world's largest population, a booming economy, and it's on track to become the world's largest economy in future years. President Trump is committed to American energy dominance, and obviously my home state of Texas is a powerhouse when it comes to energy. Talk a little bit about the possibilities for U.S.-India energy cooperation.
Look, possibilities are endless, Senator, as you pointed out. We fully intend in these trade talks that are ongoing right now to open the markets to crude oil, petroleum products, liquefied natural gas. You're talking about a population of 1.4 billion individuals there. Their middle class, by our definition, is larger than the entire United States of America. And so we have countless possibilities to expand into those markets, and we fully intend to do that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Gore, first off, congratulations to all of you. And I know each one of you is going to be dedicated and do a great job. Mr. Gore, India's purchase of Russian oil is a significant issue for our foreign policy interest. As our next ambassador to India, how do you view India's choice in light of U.S. tariffs and our strategic goals?
Thank you for the question, Senator. President Trump has been crystal clear on this. They must stop buying Russian oil. And I believe almost every single member of this committee has co-sponsored Senator Graham's legislation, which has proposed a 500% tariff on secondary purchase and reselling of Russian oil. The president has only imposed a 25% tariff, and he's fully encouraging also our European partners and others around the world to stop that. Our tariffs work if our partners around the world are on the same page. If we're unilaterally putting tariffs on someone, but they're able to buy the same oil and resell the same oil through China, through India, through Brazil, that's a problem. And so we fully intend on fixing that.
India is a vital counterweight to Communist China in the Indo-Pacific. So our relationship is very important. I'm concerned that India is a member of the BRICS organization alongside some of our biggest adversaries. So how are you going to deal with that?
Senator, I share those concerns with you. With that said, the Indians have been on our side on various issues within BRICS, including several individuals in BRICS, Brazil, China, have pushed for years to move away from the U.S. dollar. India has been the stopgap for that. India is much more willing and open to engage with us than with some of those other individuals that are in BRICS.
All right, thank you. Mr. Walker, what would you consider a clear measure of success at the end of your time as ambassador? How would you like to leave the U.S.-Bahama relationship? after your term as ambassador?
Sir, thank you for the question, Senator. And, I feel a true measure of success because the Chargé d'Affaires, Kim Furnish, and her group in the Bahamas have done an excellent job. And a true measure of success, if I can contain and let the Bahamian people know that we are their country of choice, with China making a large influence in the Caribbean, and we are able to keep China from being too close to the United States because that can become a security risk, and letting the Bahamian people know that we're the country of choice, I think that'll be a measure of success for me.
Thank you. Mr. Veprek, for years I've opposed the United Nations Relief and Works Agency choice to categorize Palestinian Arabs as refugees, decades after the conflict that created the refugee situation. No other refugee population is treated this way, and I've yet to be told the reason behind this decision. This means Palestinian refugees have to live in camps that become cauldrons of terrorism and violence, and they are never, ever resettled or recategorized. This allows Israel's enemies to falsely accuse Israel of violating international law and demanding the use of land that threatens Israel's security. What plans do you have to address the situation?
Senator, you raise a very interesting and important point, which is that the definition of refugee that UNRWA applies with regard to certain Palestinians is not the same as the definition of refugee that's applied more generally when it comes to other international instruments. I would note that the United States has drastically adjusted its engagement with UNRWA recently. And so when it comes to looking at whether and how the United States will continue to assist in Gaza and Palestinian territories, we're going to have to consider what partners we engage with there.
Thank you. Mr. Holtsnider. Keeping our focus on the Middle East, the U.S.-Jordanian relationship is clearly important, but given the current regime's instability and the pressures from our enemies on Jordan, it's also a difficult one. Do you believe this relationship can be improved, and can Jordan become more stable and less at risk from its own population and terrorist threats?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I do believe the relationship can always be strengthened. The relationship between the United States and Jordan is good. It is very strong, and again, thanks to many members of this committee who have invested in that relationship over many, many decades. I do think there is always more work to do to strengthen the bilateral relationship, particularly given the important role that Jordan plays in the region right now, and it has played for many, many years, particularly as we look at implementing the president's policy on Syria and activities going on in Israel. So if confirmed, I look forward to working with Ambassador Huckabee, with Special Envoy Tom Barrack, and others to do the very best that we can do to strengthen that relationship and support the Jordanian government.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gore, if I could begin with you. And I think Senator Shaheen raised this issue. I just want to make sure we get it on the record. I co-chair the Bipartisan Foreign Service Caucus here in the Senate, along with Senator Sullivan. And one of our goals has been to make sure that we have a foreign service that upholds the highest ideals of our country, that recognizes that they have to follow the policies of the president, but also recognizes their duty to the Constitution. You agree that those are all important considerations for foreign service officers, right?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Not only do I agree, I think it's vitally important that we rely on some of those experts that we have there. The State Department has incredible talent that has been built over many decades. And when we're able to combine that with the president's vision, I think we can have incredible success around the world.
I appreciate that. Obviously, as if you're nominated to be or confirmed as ambassador to India, it's going to be very important that all those employees, foreign service officers and others be treated, I think, with the respect that they deserve. And I'm only raising this issue because there have been a number of reports about how in your current position you've applied essentially Trump loyalty tests, not just to political appointees, but to some of the career folks at the National Security Council. Is that true? Have you insisted on loyalty to the president as part of that screening process?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I got to.
Two points, Senator, and thank you for the question. First of all, I do not hire the National Security Council. That is outside of my purview. Most of the jobs within the White House do not fall under my portfolio. So I have not hired, I've not fired anyone within the National Security Council. On your second point of the individuals that we do hire across the federal government and across the different agencies, the president was elected by 78 million people. He was given a mandate by the American people for a certain agenda. And so we do hire individuals that agree with that agenda. If you're a butcher, you're not applying to go work at PETA. And we believe we want to hire the best qualified individuals, but also individuals that frankly do agree with the president's agenda and are able to implement that.
I got it. I understand. And of course, you've got a lot of federal employees already working on behalf of the United States, and they understand that their responsibility is to implement the president's agenda, but they also recognize a duty to respect the rule of law and the Constitution. In any event, I understood your answer to Senator Shaheen, and I think it's going to be very important that you signal very early on.
100%. If I can add one last thing to that, the president has sent several nominees for ambassadorship that are career, including the gentleman to my left. And just last week, we've nominated 400 promotions within the State Department to different levels of counselor and officer. So we fully intend to continue doing that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Veprek, let me ask you, and I know you've had some questions about the situation with South Africa, because early on the president issued an executive order essentially saying he was going to penalize South Africa because of what he has described as genocide against Afrikaners, against white South Africans. I don't know what extent you've been involved in those decisions, but I do have a very simple question. Do you agree with what I think is an outrageous claim that the government of South Africa is engaged in genocide against the Afrikaners?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. With regard to the President's executive order and his comments in it that made it possible for certain ethnic minority groups in South Africa.
My question, sir, was very specific. Do you agree that the government of South Africa is engaged in genocide against the Afrikaners? Do you believe that?
I would refer to the President's executive order, including the reasons that he gave in there for deciding to privilege certain...
I'm going to stop you there. The notion that South Africa is committing genocide against Afrikaners is sort of laughable on its face from a legal perspective. Let me just ask my last question of you, Mr. Holtsnider, and thank you for your service. I just happened to be on a trip a couple weeks ago that included a stop in Jordan. One of the clear messages we got from the government of Jordan was how they had worked very hard to open what's called the Jordan Corridor to provide humanitarian assistance into Gaza, to help people who are starving in Gaza, and that there were all sorts of obstructions that had been put in their place by the Netanyahu government. Senator Merkley and I released a report today. I urge you to take a look at it, and I just ask that you work with us to address those issues should you be confirmed. Do I have that commitment?
Senator, thank you so much for the question. If confirmed, I absolutely commit to work with this committee to do what we can to get the assistance flowing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Daines.
Chairman Risch, thank you. I'm going to jump right into it. Mr. Gore, it's good to see you here today. Congratulations on your nomination. There's a lot of talk about India, certainly, as you will be, if confirmed, the next ambassador. I'm confident you will be the next ambassador in India. But you also carry another very important title and role, and that's the special envoy, the president, to both Central Asia and South Asia. I just want to bring Central Asia back into the forefront here in this Foreign Relations Committee. I don't think it gets enough attention and talk, and while we have this moment, I want to jump into the Central Asia, some of the questions there. We spoke the other day about how U.S. adversaries are really undermining the increased U.S. engagement we're seeing today in Central Asia. And clearly that breakthrough peace agreement that President Trump led between Azerbaijan and Armenia is one of these moments. It's been underreported, in my opinion, underappreciated, but significant geopolitically and ramifications will have for Central Asia. The question for you, Mr. Gore, is how important is it to show our allies in Central Asia, that the United States is turning the page from the last administration and now looking towards real investments and stronger cooperation in the region?
Senator, thank you for your question. It is vitally important, and I want to commend you. You have been one of the few individuals who actually have visited the area. From my understanding, there's not been a Senate delegation of close to a decade there. And so when the President announced me as the special envoy to the region, we've actually gotten outreach from some of those foreign ministers, including some of the presidents from those countries, and for far too long they have felt ignored by both administrations. And so we are fully engaged with those nations. The President has already spoken to some of those individual leaders over the last week alone. He will be meeting with additional leaders during his time at the UN. And so we're fully committed to bringing them into the fold. And for the longest time, they frankly have been ignored. So if I'm able to do my small part, should I be confirmed in bringing them in, we'd be thrilled by that.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. And having visited all 5 of the Central Asian countries in the last 18 months, met with the presidents of each in their respective capitals, there was one common thread. There were several common threads, but one was their great respect and appreciation of President Trump. They truly want to engage. They think so highly of the president. It's a great opportunity for us, and I'm grateful to see both the president and yourself engaging more now in Central Asia.
I appreciate that, Senator. In fact, we're actively planning a trip, the Deputy Secretary and I, Chris Landau, in October to visit possibly 3 or 4 of those countries. So we're fully committed to that relationship.
And one of the specific issues that always gets brought up is certainly the outdated policies of Jackson Vanik. That was, a Soviet-era type policy that really serves no purpose today as we move forward. Senator Chris Murphy and I have been working on this in Congress in a bipartisan way to repeal it. And I look forward to working with you in your special envoy capacity of Central Asia to see if we can get Jackson Vanik repealed. We're working that with the chairman as well. That's going to be one of the top topics. It shows a lot of respect, I think, for Central Asia and the fact they've moved on from the Soviet era of the past.
You're 100% right, and Secretary Rubio has spoken of his willingness and his desire to repeal that, and we will work towards that.
All right, just to wrap up, I want Mr. Walker, it's good to see you here today. Thank you for your willingness to serve as ambassador to the Bahamas. I'll cut right to the chase. As you know, as ambassador, you're going to be working to strengthen this relationship with the Bahamas and with our government. Can you work to build an even stronger law enforcement and counter-narcotic relationship between the United States and the Bahamas, and work to stem the tide of this poison that's entering our country?
Thank you for your question, Senator. One of the things that I put a lot of pride in myself is bringing people together and working with law enforcement. And I feel that if you can get law enforcement to communicate with each other and know how important that they are, and I feel that that's the most important thing, is to make all the law enforcement feel that they're important. I think they've gotten so much negative that now I love to make them know that they're important. They're the reason why, and I can build a championship team if we're all working together. And I can commit to that I can get them to know how important that they will be in the Bahamas and getting things done.
Mr. Walker, thank you. I'm confident you'll build another championship team there in the Bahamas. So thanks for your service. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Senator Daines, and thank you to our nominees and their families once again for your willingness to serve. We have received letters of support. I'm going to order those put into the record. For the purposes of the committee, the record will remain open until close of business tomorrow, September 12th at 5 o'clock. If any of you get questions, I would urge you to immediately answer them. It'll help move the process along. Again, thanks to the panel. Thank you to the committee for the participation. With that, committee's adjourned.